Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and this is a Dungeon Master's Guide. It's not all about surviving, but certainly that is a good motivator. No, this is a Dungeons & Dragons Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master Guide. So if you're not a Dungeon Master and you've decided to hang around for this particular live stream, this is the wrong time. I would suggest you go somewhere else. I have many videos you are welcome to go and check out, but I know that your Dungeon Master will be very upset. There are going to be heaps of spoilers. I'm going to give away an awful lot, so please don't hang around. But if you are a new Dungeon Master, an experienced Dungeon Master, this is really what you want, because I'm going to actually kind of run the game for you a little bit. I'm going to show you and explain to you as I'm going what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Okay, so that's what I'm doing for today. So your first session, this is it. You've been building up towards this. Hopefully right now you are all ready. You've done your session 0. You're ready for your first Dungeons & Dragons session. You've made sure that everybody has their character sheets. You've made sure that everybody understands what they're getting themselves into. And hopefully you'll be ready to run your very first combat encounter, because you know it's going to happen pretty quickly. You don't have to wait around too long. So you need to turn to pages 6 and 7 of The Lost Mine of Phandelver. The vast majority of what I'm covering today is on those pages. You should, as I said, have completed a session 0. This is where your players select their characters. One of the pre-made characters is perfectly fine, or they build their own character. I have done a whole bunch of videos on how to prepare for The Lost Mine of Phandelver. Those are videos you can go and check out if you want to. I've also done videos on Gundren Rockseeker, who is Gundren Rockseeker and why help Gundren Rockseeker. So now this is where you're going to lay down the basics for your adventure hook. They should understand exactly what they're getting themselves into. So you should have had some sort of discussion regarding why they are helping Gundren Rockseeker. That you should have had a discussion about who Gundren Rockseeker is, and you should have also had a discussion about in what way are they actually related. How did they meet Gundren Rockseeker? Why are they friends? All that sort of thing. So make absolutely sure that the players get an opportunity to ask plenty of questions. Otherwise, it's going to make things really difficult. Now, this adventure doesn't give you a lot of build up to it. So therefore, it can get a little bit tricky, right? So your provisor or your adventure hook is as simple as this. Okay, the players' characters are going to escort a wagon full of provisions and supplies from Neverwinter to Phandalin. And their journey is going to take them along the high road and then along the tribal trail, which will then lead them east. And this is all done to help their friend Gundren Rockseeker. Now, it's not so much the money that's important. Remember, you've got to try to tie it in and make them understand that actually Gundren Rockseeker is only part of the reason they're doing this. Now, Gundren has also brought along an individual by the name of Sildar Hallwinter. Make sure you explain and introduce Sildar Hallwinter as well. I've done videos on both of these characters if you're unsure what I'm talking about. And this is where you're going to lead off. Once you've done all of that, you're ready to sort of get them on the road and explain exactly what's going on. Now, I would open up, you can read directly from the text. I know a lot of people say, oh, that's really bad. You should memorize and have a basic idea of what to say. But I'm going to say, what a load of tosspot nonsense. It is not necessary. You don't have to operate that way. Just make sure you've got a basic idea. Okay? Now, I printed out the map for the players so they could see the basic location they were going to. I didn't put in the map that had all of the locations marked out, because that would be bad. But certainly the basic area, they might, most of the time a player's character is going to have access to maps. So it would make sense if you're going to travel from one location to another that they can buy a map in Neverwinter. Neverwinter would have a map of the location. So I wouldn't withhold that from them if they ask for it. Certainly indulge them. Now, your first paragraph, your first section that you're going to read out is on page 6. but don't read out the entire section. What I would suggest is you break it in half and just read out the first part, and then we're going to follow up and allow them an opportunity to ask questions or decide on what they would like to do. Otherwise, you've said an awful lot of information and they haven't had an opportunity to actually do anything with their character. Now, you can make sure that you have some sort of connection with Gundren Rockseeker by having a small adventure before this takes place, but you don't have to do that. Okay, so let's start off. In the city of Neverwinter, a dwarf named Gundren Rockseeker asked you to bring a wagon load of provisions to the rough and tumble settlement of Phandelver, a couple of days' journey southeast of the city. Now, I would make it clear as you're reading it out that actually Gundren Rockseeker isn't just any dwarf, he is a close friend of yours. Gundren was clearly excited and more than a little bit secretive about his reasons for the trip, saying only that he and his brothers had found something big and that he'd pay you 10 gold pieces each for escorting the supplies safely to Barthen's Provisions, a trading post in Phandelver. Now, this is where I want you to make it clear to your players that their characters are doing this as a favour for Gundren Rockseeker, because they could be doing other things, and something like escorting a wagon, although they're only level 1 and they haven't had an awful lot of experience, Gundren is probably leading them to believe that there's potentially other things afoot, that there's an opportunity to make more money or get into some sort of business with him. That would be a really good way of sort of linking them up. Also too, make it clear to the players and their characters that Gundren really wants to take off, that the wagon supply it's getting organised, it's not all going to be ready straight away, and therefore essentially he's going to go off early. He's going to leave early before they go with the wagon. Now this is probably going to cause a few problems, because for an experienced player, they're going to probably know that there's something up, that something will go wrong. So don't let them feel like they're being overridden. Let them proceed and have a conversation with Gundren Rockseeker if they want to. They might say, look, we feel like it would be unsafe. Chances are even beginner players will tend to do the same sort of thing as experienced players, but they might not. But give them an opportunity to convince Gundren Rockseeker, no, he should stay and wait for the wagon to be organised before leaving. Okay, otherwise he might get into trouble because it's a dangerous location. So the players will definitely want Gundren Rockseeker to wait. Now, in terms of questions they might ask what's on the wagon, and you'll find that driving the wagon doesn't require any special skills by any of the players and their characters, so anybody can choose to do that, so let them decide who's going to do that. You can roll off a dice if you want to, it doesn't really matter. And then you can describe the fact that they've got 2 oxen, they're going to pull the wagon, and then sort of what sort of supplies. So it actually details all the types of supplies there are. There's sacks of flour, casks of salted pork, 2 kegs of strong ale, shovels, picks, crowbars, and you'll find that there's also a bit of mining gear. So some lanterns, 5 lanterns with a small barrel of oil, and about 50 flasks in terms of volume. And then there might be other things in there as well. You're welcome to add other things that you think might be useful. It might be salted meat, it might be something else. It's up to you. Okay, so now you're ready to, once you've let them have their opportunity to interact and have a discussion with Gundren Rockseeker, now you're going to open it up and read the second part of the adventure, which is a little bit different, right? Because it's got the indication that he's already left. So this is how you're going to play it out. Okay, when they wake up in the morning ready to take the wagon to Phandelver, they find that Gundren Rockseeker, he is headed out ahead of you, and he's taken his horse along with a warrior escort, that's Sildar Hallwinter, and he's claimed that he needs to arrive. So he's left a message of some kind. Maybe he's left a message on their door or under their door or something like that, that Sildar Hallwinter needed to go, he needed to go, they needed to take care of business. So you've spent the last few days following the high road south from Neverwinter, and you've just recently veered east along Tribor Trail, and you've encountered no trouble so far. But this territory it's quite dangerous. Bandits, outlaws have been known to lurk along the trail. Okay, so you've set the scene. Again, this is a good opportunity to make sure that you have given the players an opportunity to ask questions, give feedback, that sort of thing, because things are going to progress from here. They're walking into an ambush. The players may or may not know this. The chances are they will suspect very, very shortly. They will suspect that Gundren Rockseeker has got into trouble. That's probably a no-brainer. But this is where you need to make sure you have written down somewhere the passive perception of all of the players' characters, which is what I was doing a few seconds ago as it happens. So make sure that once you've read out that second part, if you didn't collect all of their passive perception scores at the very beginning of your session before you started, this is a really good time to make sure you've done that. So go through, write them all down. You can explain why if you want. Then let the players take an opportunity to say what they were doing. Look, I know a lot of people say, oh, but you need to describe the scene and what the day was like. I find that describing the weather and so forth, it's all very well, but it takes a lot of time. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I would just look out the window, and whatever day is out there, that's the day they're experiencing, okay? Make it simple for yourself. I'm not trying to make it difficult for you. Right, next, you're going to move on to the Goblin Ambush. Now, this is where things start to develop, right? So we're going to get into the Goblin Ambush. But before doing so, make sure that you don't give away too many things. As soon as you start reading out a description of a scene, players tend to sort of find that, particularly if they're on doing their adventuring and traveling from one location to another, experienced players will be looking for this. So you need to probably just drop a few lines of dialogue just to sort of throw them off the scent. This is probably the worst part of the entire adventure, which is the very first lead-in scene. So don't be worried if the players see right through it and say, we know what's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of ambush, right? It's definitely going to happen. Don't worry about it. This is just the worst part of it. Once you get past this first encounter, it'll be a lot easier for you. Okay, so now that you've done all that, you've set everything up, and we're getting to that spot where they're going to have that ambush. So read out your scene. You've been on the Tribor Trail for about half a day. As you come around a bend, you spot two dead horses sprawled about 50 feet ahead of you, blocking the path. Each has several black feathered arrows sticking out of it. The woods press close to the trail here, with a steep embankment, and there is dense thickets on either side. Now, if that doesn't start indicating to them that there's something up, I don't know what will. So I would imagine at this point, once you've described this, give your players an opportunity to respond and interact before you do anything else, okay? Respond and interact. Otherwise, it's just not as fun for them. Now, the scene you can use, I've pulled up the King's Road. You could just draw any map you like. All you got to do is draw a stretch of road, a few bushes either side, maybe some stones or whatever. The King's Road is a good, easy to find map. You can actually access that. You can buy it online if you really wanted to. But you can draw your own map. That's not an issue either, right? Okay. Now we're leading into our scene. This is where things really start to get a little bit hairy, right? So it's going to be an ambush. So what do we do with this scene? Well, first off, I'm going to shift over to my scene with the camera so you can actually see what's going on. This is what we've got. So I've set everything up so you can see exactly how it's going to look. And from here, we're going to work our way through the whole encounter. Provide the players an opportunity to decide what they're going to do. When they were traveling, they may all decide to ride in the wagon or ride beside the wagon. I mean, some players might decide to actually ride on the oxen or the animals pulling the wagon. That's really up to you. Now, they don't know that these goblins are here. Now, the last thing you want to do when you set up your scene, okay, is put the goblins there. I've placed them there so you can see that they are located in these locations. Don't do that. Okay? when you're setting up your scene, don't put out any goblins. That's all you're putting out, nothing else. Otherwise, players are going to metagame. I've found that always to be the case. They will metagame as soon as they think that there's something strange going on. You put out miniatures and they're like, okay, well, we know that they're there because you put the miniatures out. So don't put the miniatures out. Okay, so the goblins are probably going to notice them coming down the road. It's not like the characters are being stealthy. You're pulling a wagon, it's got oxen, so using stealth checks to move up to this location is kind of pointless at this point. So if they start talking about that, then I wouldn't have a bar of that. I would just say, no, it's not really feasible. You're hauling a wagon, it makes a lot of noise. The animals make a lot of noise. You can't really be stealthy in this case. Now, they're about, I believe it's about 50 feet away. Now you have an opportunity to allow them to start off 50 feet away. They might decide to sort of move a bit closer. They might send somebody forward to check the location. That's probably the most likely situation, that somebody will decide to move forward and check if there's any danger. Now the first thing they're going to say is, can we make a perception check, or can we look for, see if there's any sort of trouble or danger around. At 50 feet, they're probably not going to be able to see goblins hiding in the bushes. So if they're looking for that kind of information, I wouldn't even bother having them roll a dice, because it won't matter whether they roll a 20, a 30 on their check. It's still not going to help them. They need to get a little bit closer before they're going to be able to notice anybody in the bushes. Now, for anybody who decides, yes, I'm going to go and investigate the dead horses and see what's going on, that's a little bit different. Certainly, I would allow them to use their passive check or even an active check in that situation, because they are getting up really close compared to the rest of them. So we're going to send off somebody who's relatively sort of perceptive. We're going to use our fighter. He's got a passive perception of 13, and it's better than the rogues. The rogues only got a 10, which is not, it's a bit weird, I know. He's going to move up and just check the bodies, okay, of these horses. So he moves up, he's looking around, and the first thing you want to do is you want to make it clear that nothing's really going to happen until they start rummaging through the bodies of these horses. Now, if they've met Gundren Rockseeker and Sildar Hallwinter already, they will know what their horses look like. So therefore, they will be able to identify them before they even move up here. So that means that alarm bells are already going off for them, okay? All right, so we're going to make a check for our fighter. Grab a 20-sided dice, and in this case, for anybody who decides to move up, I would allow them an active check. But if they get a really low score on their active check, I would also allow them to use the score from their passive check and take whichever one is higher. Okay, it doesn't actually state that in the adventure, but that's probably a sensible way of approaching it. So I rolled a 16, so 16 plus 3, 16 plus 3, and we get 19. Okay, now we're going to compare that to what is essentially a stealth check by our goblins. Our goblins are actually stealthing. Now you have a couple of options. It says in the adventure that you grab a 20-sided dice and you roll that and add it to +6, which is the stealth modifier for our goblins. You only have to roll it once, you don't have to roll it twice, and we're going to compare the two. But it would be perfectly fine for you to use a passive check for the stealth check. So you don't just have passive perception, you also have passive stealth. You can utilize that as a dungeon master. That will eliminate you rolling dice and flatten the maths. The only problem with doing something like that is that, as a general rule, it would probably be a lot harder for the players to pick up on it, because their stealth would be a 16 if it was a passive check. Okay, that's quite a high number. Whereas if you roll the dice, there is a chance that they'll roll a lot lower than that. So if I roll my dice and I get a 3 and I add 6, that's a 9. And that's going to tend to happen. You will find that the passive stealth check for a goblin, if you were to use it, is going to be a lot higher on average than just rolling a dice. Now the problem with that is, if the goblins get surprised, and they probably will, that's always a huge advantage. But there's always that slim possibility your table might wind up getting a really low modifier or low score from the stealth check from the goblins, and that'll help improve their chances with this encounter. So I would recommend following the directions in the book and go with just rolling the dice, and just let the dice decide. Okay. All right. So I'm going to rub this out now. Right now, our character has moved up, and I'm going to rub out the 16. We're going to use the number that I rolled, so I only got a 9. Okay. That means in this situation, essentially, the goblins won't get the drop. Now, the reason being is that the passive perception for our rogue is a 10. Okay, so they've got a 10. That means that's greater than the score of the stealth of our goblins. All of the other characters have a 13. So the wizard, the cleric, and our fighter got a 19 on their active, and their passive is a 13 anyway, so they would have noticed something. So as they're rummaging through those horses and inspecting the location, the saddlebags have been looted, and nearby lies an empty leather map case. Now, this character here is more likely to notice the goblins in the bushes than these characters over here. It really comes down to you need to be reasonably close, right? So this person's not going to be surprised. That's essentially what would unfold. I'm going to roll another dice because I actually want to play this out, so not so much with without surprise, because I want to apply surprise. And the reason being, I want to show you just how deadly this encounter can be when the monsters get to act first. So I'll just roll another dice. Okay, so that's a 10, and we're going to add that to our 6, which equals 16. Okay, and therefore the stealth modifier is, or stealth score is really, really high. Okay, so that means that the ones in the wagon, their passive perceptions are too low, so they're not going to be able to detect the goblins. But this fighter here would know. You can see them sort of set up in their locations. Now, when you do this, I would suggest that you only, you can place them out sort of, or just whisper to your player who is the fighter, rather than put the miniatures out. Because even though these characters here think, okay, well, we know where their location is, they really don't know their location until a fight breaks out. And we're going to do that in a second. Okay. I'm going to rub this out. So we have established our fighter is not surprised, and the other 3 are. It'd be much worse if the rogue came up. If they bring up the rogue first, it's going to be really, really painful. Okay, so let us just shuffle this along just a little bit, and I'll move that down. And I'm going to write on here our scores as I run through, and what we're going to do is I'm going to roll initiative, because we need to roll initiative to determine who's going to go first. We know that the goblins are going to have to act, and they will, so I'll place them out in their appropriate locations, like so. And we're going to roll for the initiative on our fighter, which I believe the initiative modifier is a, where is it? It's a -1. It's not very high, so fighter gets 14, -1 is a 13. Okay, we'll do the Goblins Initiative as well. Goblins. Now the Goblins modifier, I believe, is a +2, so roll our 20-sided dice. I'll roll the black dice for them, eh? Okay, so 8 plus 2 is 10. That's their initiative. Okay. And we'll do the other characters. We'll do our wizard next. Alright, roll our dice. Okay, I got a 6, and I'm going to add to the wizard, what is it? It's a +2, yep. So that's only an 8, not very high. It makes it much worse. The lower their initiatives, the worse things can get. Rogue. And there we go. And then roll our dice. A 12, and the initiative modifier is a +3, so that's 12 plus 3 is 15. That's good. Okay, last one is going to be the cleric. There we go. Roll our dice. I rolled a 14 and our clerics only got a -1, so that's going to be a 13 as well. Now if you have a draw between characters, they can decide. Older versions of the game would state that you have to have a roll-off, or you have to decide based on who's got the highest dexterity modifier. That is just not the case anymore. We don't use it that way. Let the players figure it out amongst themselves. So now that we've established what our initiative is, I'm just going to not jot these down and put them into order. That will just make it easier for me to track everything. So the top of the initiative is our rogue at 15. And we need to decide, is the fighter or the cleric going to go first? And I imagine that the fighter and the cleric players are going to say, well, no, the fighter is in the worst case scenario. If there's a fight taking place, let the fighter go first. Or they might decide, no, I'm the cleric, I want to be able to cast something like Bless. So let them decide. I'm going to put the fighter first because he is in the threat area. So that's the 13. And then our cleric is also a 13. And then we'll jot down our goblins. And that's a 10. And then the wizard is last on 8. Okay, alright, so that is now our initiative, and I will place it. Can I place that over there and you still be able to see it? Yeah, okay, so that'll make it a little bit easier, just to make it easier for me so I can actually get at things. It's getting a bit crowded around here. All the things laid out. Okay, right, rubbing out some marks. I'm going to use this as we start rolling some dice and determining attack rolls and so forth. Okay, so our first thing is we work our way through the initiative and we decide who gets to go first based on who has been surprised and who hasn't. So the rogue was surprised. Even though their initiative is higher, they get to go first. They don't get to do anything in their turn. So rogue does nothing. They spend their time being surprised. At the end of the round, they are no longer surprised, but all they can do is take a reaction. That's it. Okay, done. Fighter. We'll move on to the fighter. The fighter, okay, can actually do something. He can see that there are some goblins either side. Now they can shout out and try and warn the rest of the party, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to change the outcome in terms of surprise. Surprise has already been determined in that split second when you started rolling a stealth check, using passive perception, making active perception checks, and triggering things. He's moved up to here, that is the trigger. Okay, as soon as he moves up and approaches the horses, that's the trigger. So even if he shouts out because he's noticed them, doesn't mean that the rest of the party underneath here lose the fact they are surprised. I know that comes up quite a bit. You're probably going to have an argument with your players about this, particularly players who are not necessarily new to the game, because newer players will probably totally understand, but there's bound to be somebody who's played the game before who will want to argue that point. Just make it clear that just because they've shouted out doesn't mean that they haven't shouted out and tried to warn you. You just haven't been able to respond and react fast enough compared to the goblins, even though they have shouted out. That's all there needs to be in terms of a discussion around that. Okay, so the fighter is going to take this opportunity to move up and attack one of them. I'm going to make an attack. I'm going to move this over here. I grab my 20-sided dice. I'm going to use my great axe, because the great axe is going to do a lot more damage than something like a javelin, and getting up close is probably a lot more sensible. Okay, so we're going to roll our 20-sided dice. I rolled an 18. I'm going to add my modifier for, oh no, it's not an 18, it's a 16. Whoops, got to get it right. Yep, just the angle, just the angle. It's a 16. Add that to the 5, that comes to 21. Now 21 is greater than or equal to the armor class of our goblins. Our goblins currently have an armor class of 13 because they're not wearing a shield, but because they're in cover, I've given them another +2, so they're now 15. So I still hit the target, and now we get to do some damage. Okay, so roll your 12-sided dice for your great axe. I've rolled a 10, so 10. Now, there's not much point me continuing with this, but I will, because it's going to be useful to you, even though the outcome is pretty much already been determined by this rather hefty blow that it's about to get hit with. Okay, so I'm going to add a 3, the Great Axe, and that's the attack roll, that's the strength modifier, that comes to a grand total of 13. So it's going to do 13 points of damage to this goblin here in the bushes, who was hiding. Now, a goblin only has 7 hit points, so that goblin is dead. Okay, you got a dead goblin, so that's always a good thing. You can see how a lot of things can happen very quickly. At low level and in the surprise round, a lot of things can happen very quickly. Okay, let's move on to the next character. So over here, we've done our fighter. Now, a fighter might decide to continue moving. They can move over to another goblin. They only moved from here 5 feet, and they have 30 feet. So you can hit that one and split your movement, which is always a sensible thing. They could decide, I think it's probably best to get out of the open and go into the bushes, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to move into the bushes. Okay, these bushes, I'm going to classify them as difficult terrain. So my fighter is going to move in, so moved 5. Every bush is going to, or every square in the bushes is going to represent 10 feet. So difficult terrain doubles your movement. Okay, so 15, 25. Now it didn't get them all the way over to where that goblin is over there, but if you really wanted to, you can. You can go there and then go diagonally. There's no corner, there's no room or anything like this. So it's possible to get from where you are right over here, so you're ready for the next attack on that goblin if you really wanted to. Okay, one fighter has finished. We're going to move over to our cleric. It's our cleric's turn. Our cleric was surprised. They've heard the barbarian shout out a warning that there are goblins in the bushes, but they are surprised. They do nothing during their turn because their passive perception was way too low for the stealth check. So therefore they get to do nothing on their turn. They end their turn. They now have access to their reaction. They are no longer surprised. Okay, but they can't do anything at this present time. It is now the goblins' turn. The goblins now have a decision to make about what they will do. This is the dangerous part, is when monsters get to go first. This goblin here, rather than trying to get too fancy, goblins have a thing called nimble. They essentially allows them to do a whole lot of different things. They can use a bonus action to hide, or they can use it to disengage. That's perfectly acceptable. Now you can decide to engage in a fight with this this fighter who's just downed one character, or you might decide, look, this goblin doesn't like the idea of doing this. It's going to be smarter for the goblin to actually take off. Try and find a different place to go, okay, and then maybe hide as a alternative. So we're going to use the bonus action to disengage from the fighter, and we're going to move. And while we're doing that, at the end of that, we're going to take the opportunity to try and also to stealth. This is what goblins do. This is what they do really well, right? So this is 10 feet, 15, 20, 30. They have a speed of 30, so you can move to there, disengage, no attack of opportunity from the fighter, and then use their action. They've used their bonus action to disengage because of their special feature. They've moved their distance, and they are now going to hide. So you roll a stealth check for them. So I'll roll a 20-sided dice, add my 6, so that's 12. I can make a note of that by just grabbing a 12-sided dice and putting that right beside that character for later on. Okay, so we know that that's got a modifier of 12. That's that goblin. But there are 2 more goblins here. Now, they might not decide, well, it's not going to be much point trying to shoot into the bushes and hit this barbarian who's wandered in there, because they're going to have cover. We'll shoot the ones on the cart or the wagon. Now, shooting past something like an oxen or an animal at somebody who's sitting on a wagon, you can decide whether they get a cover save or not. I'm going to allow these characters to have a cover save because I feel like based off the angle and position, it probably would make sense. I'm going to move up 1 goblin to here, and you're going to use your line of sight. So we're going to use our short bows. So we're going to grab a 20-sided dice. We're going to make some attacks with those short bows. The modifier is only a 4. Okay, so I've rolled an 18, so it's probably going to hit the target, whatever I'm hitting at. This goblin's going to shoot the rogue in the front. So 18, I'm going to add 4 to that because that's their modifier. Okay, that comes to 22, sorry, not 12, 22. Okay, I'm going to roll some damage and see what happens to our rogue and how much damage they take. There's only a 6-sided dice and worth of damage plus 2. Now, normally at low level I don't roll dice for damage because it's just way too dangerous for any kind of player's character. Usually there's a number on the stat block which you can access and have a look at, and that will actually show you an average number. So if you look at the stat block right now, you'll notice beside short bow it says ranged weapon attack +4, which we've already done, and it's got a range of 80, but it says here where it says hit 5 and then in brackets 1d6, which is the 6-sided dice +2. I will often just take the flat maths of a 5, okay, rather than rolling the damage, because I might wind up rolling significantly more than I really want to. It flattens the maths. There's also the chance that I will roll a lot lower, but often I will take that as an option just to make it a little less dangerous for our players' characters. And as you can see, the nimble escape feature for disengage and hide is there as well. Okay, so back to our scene. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to roll damage for the goblin. I'm just going to apply 5 points of piercing damage to our rogue. Our rogue doesn't have a lot of hit points. They only have 9 hit points. So if you go 9 hit points less 5, take away 5, it's only coming to what? There's only 4 hit points left on that rogue. You can see how only 1 or 2 rounds and your low level characters are now going to be squishy. So I'll put a dice just beside him to represent how many hit points he has. Still alive. Now this one here is going to shoot over at the wizard. We're going to shoot at the wizard because I feel like that's sort of a reasonable target. I'm going to allow them to have cover. The armor class for our wizard is 15 rather than the 12 that's on the character sheet, because they have cast mage armor at the beginning of the day, and if you're sensible and you're playing wizard, that's exactly what you should be doing. Okay, I'm going to give them cover so that their armor class is now 17 with the mage armor and trying to shoot past all the things. Right, so we'll roll our dice and see if we can hit that target. One goblin over here. I rolled an 11. Okay, +4 equals 15. Now 15 is going to miss the target. Okay, 15 is not equal to or greater than the armor class of 17 for the wizard right now. So it misses. That's good news. That's good news. Okay, so the goblins have taken their turn. They have shot. They can also move, and then they can use their bonus action to hide again. This is what makes goblins really, really dangerous. So you can then decide where they move and then remove them from the table. So this one might move over here. Make your stealth check, okay? Make a note of where they are. You don't even have to move them on the grid. Just take them away, okay, to indicate that they are no longer visible to the player's characters, including the fighter. Okay, including the fighter. Can't see them. Now, you don't need to worry about making the stealth check right now, because it's not going to matter what you roll for the stealth check unless one of the player's characters decide to actually search for them. Okay, as long as they're stayed in cover and aren't out in the open, I wouldn't worry about rolling a stealth check at this present time. Okay, alright, so that's all of our goblins taking their turn. It is now down to our wizard. The wizard was surprised, heard the barbarian shout out, some arrows have been flying around, and arrows flown past the wizard's head, but it doesn't get to do anything. Wizard doesn't get to do anything. Ends their turn because they're surprised. They can take reactions now if they want to. They couldn't take a reaction before. Okay, if the target had been hit, they couldn't have used shield, okay, because it wasn't going to work. The goblins are going before the wizard. Alright, so we're back to the top of the round. It's now the rogue's turn. We're no longer in round 1. It's now round 2. Surprise no longer applies at this point. There's no surprise, there's only the stealth option in combat. So our rogue is going to decide, well, that was really, really dangerous. I don't really want to stay in this location and get shot at too much if I can help it. So what I'm going to do, you've got a couple of options. They might decide they want to duck down into the wagon and benefit from total cover so they don't get hit again. Or they might decide, I'm going to get off this wagon and I'm going to position myself so I have a bit of retain my cover. I can't see a target to shoot, but they can select to use their action to search and look for where the goblins might be, but that will use up their action, therefore they won't be able to do anything else. So it's up to them. So that our rogue is going to hop off and jump down and sort of duck around behind these boulders and so forth. And the instructions that my rogue is given, or player's rogue is given, is that I'm using the cover of the rocks, but I am just peeking around and I'm going to ready an action. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to surprise, please, as Dungeon Masters, when you're dealing with a new group, please advise them on good tactics, particularly with the very first encounter. It is not cheating and taking away from the game by saying, look, you might want to move and shoot and then move into cover, or use some cover and shoot from a position where you are unlikely to get hit really, really badly. That would be the smartest thing to do. So the rogue's instruction is, under the advice of our Dungeon Master, look, ready in action. If you see a goblin sort of stick its head out to make a shot, then you shoot your bow at them. That would be the most sensible thing to do. So that is what our rogue is going to do. They're waiting for one of the goblins to poke their head out. So that's the rogue's done. We go to our fighter. Our fighter has got a problem now, doesn't know where the other goblins are, and has got a great axe in their hand. It's perfectly acceptable for them to decide, I'm going to pull out a javelin. I don't know where they have gone. I'm going to move to here. I can't see anything. I'm going to stay in the cover. I feel like he might be around here somewhere, and I'm going to just wait and see if anybody tries to shoot at me before I do anything else. The problem with this encounter is you wind up with a situation of attrition where everybody is hiding from each other and everybody is using cover, so it can take a long time. Okay, so he's not actually hiding. He hasn't taken the hide action. He's just using the cover. That means he can still be seen by this goblin. He just doesn't know the goblin's there. He has to use his action, which he may not want to do, to actually figure out where the goblin is. So this is an opportunity to do something to just make sure, okay, I'm just going to ready an action. If I see anything sort of take a shot at me or pop out, then I'm going to throw my javelin at them. Because he probably suspects that the goblin's somewhere in this location, can't be too far away, right? Okay, so that is our ready action for our fighter. Okay, moving down to the cleric. The cleric is no longer surprised. We're in round 2. They're going to decide, what are they going to do? Well, our cleric might decide the sensible thing is, I'm going to use the cover of the wagon. I'm going to stay on the wagon. I know that there were shots fired from over here. I don't know where they are right now. I could use make a perception check to actually figure out where they are, but I won't be able to use an action, if that's the case, to actually make an attack. So I'm going to duck down and I'm going to ready my Ray of Frost, not Ray of Frost, Sacred Flames, it's a cleric, to hit. I'll try and destroy the goblins if they are visible. If somebody tries to shoot at me, okay, I've got a line of sight along here and here. Hopefully I'll be able to see something. They might be shouting out instructions as well, and certainly you should be encouraging your players to have some sort of discussion. It doesn't always have to be in character. I know a lot of people like, if you're going to have tactical discussions, make sure it's always in character. Well, guess what? There are cell phones. People can have their cell phone underneath the desk and be texting each other all sorts of tactical information, because that's what I used to do. Okay, now, so that's ready to action from our cleric. Now, waiting for the goblins to reveal themselves. Our wizard hasn't had a chance to do anything, okay? Hasn't taken a turn yet. So it's now the goblin's turn. The goblin knows the fighter is here, knows the wizard's over here, knows the cleric is over here, because they're not hiding. They can take a shot. Probably the easiest target is going to be the one that's over here, that's, still sort of not using cover and probably not really well armored. But this one is the biggest threat, and it's really, really close. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot the lightly armored character, because that's what goblins do. They're sneaky little sods. That's what they do. So I'll roll our 20-sided dice. I rolled a 3. We add our 4 for our modifier, which equals 7. So 7 is nowhere near enough to hit the wizard. So the arrow is going to shoot right past the wizard and miss them. But it's now triggered the action from our fighter, who has decided, I'm going to take an action if I see anything. I don't think that our rogue would necessarily be able to see along here. We'll just move that out of the way. Does it seem reasonable to you? You guys will let me know. We'll say that the rogue hasn't actually seen anything over here. There's too much blocking its line of sight. But there was a ready to action from our cleric and from our fighter. Our fighter is going to make an attack. They're going to throw and hurl that javelin at that goblin. So we need to hit the armor class of 15 because they're in the bushes. Yep. As soon as they make their attack, they have given away their location. That's what the benefit of having a ready to action is. Okay, I got a 15. So 15 plus 5 for the for the javelin is going to come to a grand total of 20. 20 is greater than and equal to the armor class of 15 for our goblin in cover. Therefore, we get to do some damage. Whoops, rolled the wrong dice, but doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll do some damage. The javelin, I believe, is a 6-sided dice. Where is my 6? There we go. We'll roll that. I rolled a 1. It's not very good, but we get to add a nice big number for that because fighters are strong. And we get to add a 3. Okay, that's 4 hit points. Wallop. So our goblin has just taken a lot of damage. Forget about the stealth because they broke cover. Okay, so it's taken a lot of damage. So I'm going to put a marker here. They normally have 7 hit points. This one has 7 hit points. So 7 less 4 is 3. So it's now on 3 hit points. Now, I would say it would be reasonable to say that our cleric might have a chance to actually target this goblin as well. It's broken cover. It's been seen. It's been shot at by, or had a javelin thrown at it. There's an opportunity to finish it off. So I would encourage your players to go with that. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to try to hit it. Now, it's a Sacred Flame is a dexterity saving throw, so our monster has to make a dexterity saving throw. They get to add a 2 to this number, so whatever I roll on the dice. So I rolled a 5. 5 plus 2 equals 7. Now 7, this number that they get for their dexterity check is also modified, so they get to add another 2 because of the cover. Okay, they're in cover, so it's actually another 2 becomes 9. Okay, so that means that their check is a 9. The dexterity modifier or dexterity DC for Sacred Flame for our cleric is a 13. So it's failed. So you have to get equal to or greater than to avoid the effect. That means that Sacred Flame is going to go off. It's going to do some damage. How much damage? It's 1 6-sided dice. Don't add anything else to it. It's just a cantrip. I rolled a 2. Okay, so we've done 2 points of damage, and our goblin's looking very, very sick. It's now on 1 hit point. We'll move that out of the way. All right, so it's another hit, and it goes down. It's really, really badly hurt, which is good. We want that, okay? All right, so we'll rub that out. Now, our goblin has taken only part of their turn. There's been a lot of readied actions. We've still got a readied action from our rogue. So what we're going to do now, oops, I've moved the 1 out of the way and I need to leave it there. Whoopsie. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to continue having the goblin's turn. It has a choice now. It can decide that, okay, I've taken my shot, I've been detected, I'm going to flee. This is often what goblins will do. And so it can move quite a long way. 5. Now you can go into the open or you could go into a different location. It's really up to you. So it's going to decide, okay, I'm going to run across open area and try to sort of escape, or move into the bushes, and then I'm going to use my hide action. So I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go with 10, 20, 30. It's moved. I can now use my action to move again and then hide. Okay, or my goblin could decide I'm going to move, hide, and also take the dodge action. So it makes it even harder for somebody to hit me as I run away. Don't run your goblins out into the open. They will get shot to pieces. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to move. I didn't move very far, but it doesn't matter. I'm now hiding. Okay, I can make my stealth check, but I won't do that right now because I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to mark it as stealthing. And it's also taking the dodge action, so it makes it even harder for somebody to hit that goblin. Okay, and he's going to be off the battlefield very shortly, and there's nothing the players can do. Okay, so we've got a couple more goblins that need to reveal their positions, right? So we've got a goblin who's revealed their position to be roughly here and another one has revealed their position to be roughly there. Your rogue had a ready to action, and you might decide, okay, well, I should be able to see around the rocks at this one here. They're going to take their shots first. This one here is going to shoot at the wizard, who still hasn't had a chance to actually do anything. So I rolled a 1. 1 is an automatic miss. Doesn't matter what you add to it. So if you roll a 1, you're screwed. Okay, so the arrow flies wide. I can then take my goblin and then move 10, 15, 20, not 15, not 20, 30. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, there. And then take the hide action if I want. I've done an attack. I've moved. I hide. This is what often goblins do. They will attack, move, hide. Attack, move, or disengage, attack, and then they can hide again if they wanted to. All those sort of combinations. Don't put them up in front. They don't like being up close. Okay, this one is going to take its attack on... I'm going to shoot at the cleric over here. Or you could even decide you're going to shoot at the rogue, because the rogue's not hidden, it's just got cover. We'll go for the rogue. Why not? It's already injured. So I rolled a 4. So 4 plus 4 equals 8. So 8 is not enough to hit the armor class of our rogue. Our rogue has an armor class of 14 normally, but has cover as well, so the armor class is 16. You've got to get equal to or greater than. Arrow misses, but it now triggers the ready to action by our rogue, who now gets an opportunity to fire back, which is exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to shoot them. We won't get sneak attack damage. I know a lot of people will be thinking, oh, but that sort of sucks if you don't get sneak attack damage. Wait until you get further up. When you get to level 2, things change a lot. So make your attack. I rolled a 3, which isn't very good. We add 5. 3 plus 5 equals 8. 8 is going to miss the goblin as well. Okay, so you've missed your ready to attack. Doesn't matter. The goblin then decides, okay, I'm going to move into a different position. And then I'm going to hide again, because I can, right? 5, 10, 15, it's actually 10, 20, 30, and we hide there. I'm going to mark it by a dice to indicate that it's hiding, but I'm not going to worry about making the hide check, because unless you actually look for them, you can't find them. It's not going to work that way. It hasn't actually taken any damage yet. Okay, all right, let's rub this out. And now we're down to the wizard, who's finally got to act on the end of round 2. Now your wizard doesn't know where any of the goblins are, but they can decide, okay, I've been shot from this location over here, I've been shot from over here as well. I can decide on a location that might be best suited to me. I'm going to decide on this side. I haven't been hit yet. I'm going to duck down a little bit. I'm going to use the cover of the wagon, or you can jump off the wagon and go to cover if you want to. And then I'm going to ready an action when I can see somebody to shoot who isn't one of my friends. If I see one of the goblins pop out and try to shoot at me, I'm going to sort of blast them with my Ray of Frost. Ray of Frost slows you down and does a bit of frost damage, or cold damage. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're going to ready an action with that character. Okay, and then we move up, and it's now the rogue's turn. The rogue now has to decide what they're going to do. What am I going to do? I'm going to move into a better position and then hide, or what am I going to do? So what I'm going to do with my rogue is there's no targets. They can do the same thing they did before, which is to ready an action, or they can decide I'm going to try to get a better bead on them, and we'll move this character far. It already was there, so we'll go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and then I want to move again. I don't want to be out in the open, so we'll move again into cover. And we'll go 5, 15, and it knows it's been shot from this location, so it's coming around this way a little bit. So I've had to use my move, I've had to use my action. I can't do anything with my bonus action because I've got no access to that just yet. I can do that later though, that's always an option. Okay, so now that that's done, I believe, oops, I've moved the rogue right off the battle mat. Sorry guys. Sometimes I don't pay attention, so I'll move my rogue to just there. Yep, okay. Okay, so that's our rogue. And he's just looking around, he's trying to see if there's anything going on. He hasn't hidden, but there's always the opportunity to deal with that later. So there's the rogue. Now, it might be smarter for the rogue to decide, I'm just going to hunker down and keep out of sight because I've already been injured. And you could do that. So we'll backpedal it. We'll just leave it there. We'll say, okay, I'm going to just hunker down, get low and prone since I'm already hurt, and I'm not down and dead. I'm just trying to stay out of harm's way. We'll do that. I think that's a better idea. I think it's a much better idea. And look, it's all right as you're playing the game to make advice to you for your players. If your players are doing things that you think might be just a little bit silly or might not be beneficial to them, it's all right, particularly when it's their first encounter, to give them a bit of advice. So we've backpedaled that. Dungeon Master said, look, it's probably better to stay over here. Okay? It is very tempting to get right up close and try to get in those attacks on somebody. Okay. All right. So we've done that. We're now on to the fighter. The fighter doesn't really know what's going on, doesn't know where the goblins are. Here's a chance for them to decide, okay, well, I'm not sure if the goblin's over here or not, so what I'll do is I'll move 5, 10, 20, 30. Now you're getting close to the position of the goblin, and at this point I've used up all my movement. I will use my action to actually look for the goblin in the bushes. It's reasonably close, so I'm going to make a perception check. So I'm going to roll a perception check. We're adding a +3 for this. You can choose to use a passive check if you feel the players are going to metagame, but it won't matter because they're only going to get to roll it once anyway. Okay, so roll your 20-sided dice. I get an 11. So 11 plus our 3 equals 14. Now we need to worry about the stealth check for our goblin who's trying to run away. Okay, so this is where you're going to grab that 20-sided dice, make their check. They got a 19 plus 6 equals 25. So there's no way that the barbarian would have any idea where that goblin is. It is possible that they might wind up walking into the goblin's position, but here's the thing. You need to make sure that as you're playing the game, you remove the goblins from their locations. Okay, I'm leaving them out just to make it easy for you. Okay, I know players, they find it very hard to not metagame when they see miniatures on the table. Alright, so that is our fighter's turn. And our rogue is hiding away. Our cleric is going to take their turn. The cleric is unsure what's going on, but this is an opportunity for the cleric to cast a spell and heal the rogue, or just ready another action to shoot if somebody tries to shoot back at them. They've got really high armor class, so the chances are it's actually not a smart. It's a good idea. So that's exactly what we'll do. They're going to ready that sacred flame to try and target a creature that tries to shoot at them, should that happen. All right. So this is what's going to take place, and we get back to our goblin. So ready to action here, ready to action here, and our goblin. Now you'll see with this situation, if you don't ready actions and use cover, it would turn out a lot worse for your players' characters. This goblin is going to shoot over at the cleric, who's going to have cover, but we're still going to do it. It's probably the easiest target for them to hit because the wizard's a little bit further back. But it's up to you based on the angle. If you feel like it's going to work, you could go for the wizard. I'm going to go for the cleric. Roll that 20-sided dice. Now I've given away my position by making that shot though. I rolled a 1, I miss. That means all those ready actions can now, well, there's a target, they can decide whether they want to shoot at this creature, because that stealth doesn't apply anymore. There's no longer stealth. As soon as you shoot, you're no longer stealthed. Alright, so Sacred Flame, we'll start with that. You can work your way through from whoever's got the highest initiative to the lowest initiative. You can do them both at the same time and have them both do their attacks. It doesn't matter. Right, so we'll make a check for Sacred Flame for this goblin. Okay, I rolled an 11. 11 plus 2 plus another 2 for cover. It's not hidden, but it's still got cover. So that's going to be a 15. Now 15 is unfortunately much greater than the DC for our cleric, who's only got a 13. So Sacred Flame is going to become Sacred Miss. It does no damage. But we've still got that Ray of Frost. Now that's an attack roll. That's a very different kettle of fish. So make your attack roll with your wizard. I rolled a 20. Now that's a critical. That means you do twice as much damage as you normally would. It doesn't matter what the cover bonuses are, it's going to hit the target, which is a good thing. Okay, so I'm going to use our Ray of Frost, grab that 8-sided dice. Where is the 8-sided dice? Right there. We're going to roll this. Now when you go for you get a critical, that means you get to roll double the dice. There's no modifier for the damage, and we'll just see what we get. So I roll that one, and we'll grab another 8-sided dice as well. I'll roll 2 of them at the same time. So I rolled a 3 and a 2. I'm rolling really badly. Okay, so 3 is the total damage. 2 plus 1 equals 3. So we do 3 points of damage to our goblin here. So I'll grab a dice. Used to have 7 hit points. Now it's less. It's got 4 hit points. I'll put 4 hit points on that one. It's been hit. Okay. The stealth and ambush is not working out quite the way they had expected. Things haven't worked out as well as they had hoped. Now the adventure states that you wait until 3 of the goblins are killed before one of them will run away. But you don't need to do that. As the Dungeon Master, you can have your goblins think, okay, this situation's got out of hand really quickly. We've already lost one person, and we pretty much had the drop on them. So even though the adventure states the conditions for how to run them and how it would work, you do not need to do that. Play your goblins smart. Goblins want to live. They can always come back later on and harry the player's characters if they want to. They can't do that if they know where they are. The idea is not to play them to be killed so the XP can be collected. It doesn't work like that. Even if they don't kill the goblins and they defeat the situation, they still get the experience points. It doesn't matter. Alright, so this goblin here has been spotted and hurt. It's going to flee, and instead of just running out into the open, it's going to go 10, 20, 30, and it's going to move again and move right off the map. I'm going to have that goblin actually just run away. Probably the smartest thing you can do, right? Just have it run away. Now, that one of the goblins is not injured. It might decide to come back and make an attack, and it can do so if it wants to. So this is your opportunity to. Now, here's the thing: when you are hidden, normally when you're hidden, you get advantage if somebody else can't see you. And I haven't been rolling advantage on a lot of these attacks. If you start rolling advantage, which you probably should be doing, if you have surprise and you are unseen, things get really, really bad for the player's characters, because you're going to get to roll 2 20-sided dice and take the highest result. Now, I haven't been doing that. Okay, if I'd done that, things have worked out much, much worse. Okay, so that is really the basics. I don't really want to go into, I don't want to play the whole thing out. I just feel like it would be unnecessary. But when it comes to a situation like that, feel free to give the players' characters, the players in particular, advice on how to run through this first encounter. This is the hardest combat they will come across when they're first starting the game. One, because the situation has been set up so that the monsters have surprise, which is bad. Bad for the players' characters, that is. And also, it's set up in such a way that there's not an awful lot they can do. You can wind up with a situation of attrition where your goblins are making attacks, moving and hiding, and they can just repeat that and do it over and over and over again. Alright. Okay, so I think I've covered all of the basic things I needed to cover for this particular video. So we're going to just wrap it up and then have a discussion in the live chat. So if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. Consider subscribing to my channel if you like this sort of thing. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. If you watched this video, you supported me, and thank you very much. If you want to continue supporting the channel, I have many videos for players and Dungeon Masters, and if you're a player, you shouldn't be watching this anyway, but Dungeon Masters, go and check out my other Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master guides. I have a whole bunch of them. I don't do Patreon, but I do have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon where you can check, you can buy things online. I get a small commission, and yeah, Amazon and the book depository are the only ones that I have right now. Now, if you have questions, feedback, if you want to tell me how the situation played out at your table as the Dungeon Master, I will be happy to hear it. It's always interesting. I kind of collect those stories so that I have a body of knowledge about how it worked for some people and how it didn't work for others. So yes, that's what the live chat's for. If you're not part of the live chat or the live stream, then that's what the comments section's for. Jump into the comments and we'll have a discussion down below. Thank you, YouTube, for providing it. Now, this is the end of my video, essentially. So till next time, keep rolling those 20s.